Hello, world travelers. We hope you learned a lot from our trip to Asia last week. Our next stop on our Strings World Tour is the Middle East. The Middle East is a huge area with many different cultures and music traditions. We could easily take the entire year to study music of the Middle East and still not have covered even a small portion of it.
You can see from the map of the Middle East that there are 18 different countries, but many people include several others in an area called the Greater Middle East. Even though there are so many different countries in the region, there are a few things that they have in common. Islam is the largest religion in the region, and Arabic is the most spoken language, but other religions and languages are present as well.
There is also an instrument popular across the Middle East called the oud. The oud probably originated in Persia about 3,500 years ago. Many centuries later, the Moors in northern Africa, or the Crusaders, carried the oud to Spain, where it entered Europe and as the lute, and it was ultimately transformed into the six-stringed fretted guitar that we have today.
The oud has no frets, just like the orchestra strings. That means you can put your fingers anywhere and play lots of in-between notes, or what we like to call microtones. This is a good thing for Middle Eastern music, but a challenge for beginning string players. That's why we often put tapes on your fingerboard to mark where your fingers go on the strings.
Originally, the oud had just four strings, but over time, more and more strings have been added. Watch the next video very carefully and see if you can count how many strings this modern oud has. We hope you enjoy the richness of the music as Ahmed Al-Shaiba takes us on a trip around the Middle East.
Another important instrument of from the Middle East is the qanun. Its roots go back almost 4,000 years to Mesopotamia, but it was first introduced in the Middle East around 1100 years ago. 200 years later, it made its way to Europe and became known as the zither. The qanun can have up to 81 strings, which are grouped in threes.
Maya Yusuf is considered one of the great talents of the qanun, and she has a really interesting story. Here's her story in her own words. It all happened in the backseat of a taxi. The driver was listening to a qanun recording which took my breath away. I told him with all the enthusiasm of an 8-year-old that this is what I want to learn. He laughed and told me that the qanun is for men, and that I should forget about it. I then developed an international career performing at the world's top venues and festivals, and I started teaching students from all over the world. Winning awards, receiving rave reviews, and reaching millions of people from playing the qanun is amazing. But what is even more amazing is that through playing the qanun, I've found love and connection with people beyond my wildest dreams. So here's a video of Maya Yusuf playing the qanun.
For our music skills study this week, Let's talk a little bit about the music staff. The staff is where the music that we read and play is written. Like lined paper helps us keep our written words and sentences in order, the lines and spaces of the music staff help keep our musical thoughts in order and allow us to share our music with others.
So I think one of the best ways to think about music notes, if you haven't learned how to figure out what letter it is, essentially it's just telling you if this is an A, a B, a C, a D, an E, an F, or a G, and that's it. Right? In music, we just go to G and we start all over at A again. If you didn't know that, you can count from the bottom of the piano, from the lowest note, using A through G, A through G, A through G, A through G. No H's in music. So think of it like a ladder. When you're climbing a ladder, you know, sometimes your head is in between two of the steps. They're called rungs. I like the word rung. And then sometimes there's a rung, a step right in front of your face. So we call those line notes and space notes. I'll run through a slideshow I use to help teach in class, but really quickly, feel free to ask questions through your teachers and try and get a hold of us. I'd be happy to talk about it if you have more questions, because I'm going to go fast. So they're on a ladder. You can have notes that are in between a space or on a line. So, oops, there's a space note. There's a line note. We call them space notes and line notes. He's in a space. He's in a line. Space note, line note, space note, line note. And they go all the way up to the top as high as we can reach. So they can be in a space. So space notes can be down below. They can be up high. They can be sitting on top of it. That's still a space note. There's no in-betweens. You're either a line note or a space note. You can't have anything in between. It's how we learn to read. Just like if you were to learn to read Chinese, if you can't read Chinese characters already, Mandarin characters already, if you were just to train yourself to look at it, pretty soon you know, okay, that's third finger on the D string, or that's 1, 2, 3, and the thumb hole and the funny looking key on the clarinet in band, you know, or singing this note that feels like this when you're singing. So they can be on a line as well, right? There's a line note. He always has a line stuck right through his head, but he doesn't seem to mind. So, and it is called a note head, just like I have this head. So these are line notes. These are line notes. There's another line note. If you have extras, you just put an extra line down there sometimes. You'll notice we usually only have 5 lines. So just like your hand has 5 fingers, you can kind of help to count the lines if you need to figure things out, or the spaces in between. There's 4 spaces, right, in between those 5 lines. It doesn't matter if you go upside down or right side up. You can use your hand to help figure these out. There's a line note down below. So here are line notes and space notes. Pause the video if you need to. What's this one? Space note. I'm going to go fast. What's this one? Line note. What's this one? Space note. And line note. Line note. And space note. Okay? So you can do those. If you then can just remember when we look at violin music or viola music or cello and bass music, to name the note first before you can figure out what string and what finger to play it with. You got to name it first. So we can go like this. We put up that hand and we say there's 5 lines and there's 4 spaces. So if I go at the very bottom space for violins, that space note is F. Skip that line note. Go up to the next space, A, C, and E. What's that spell? Face. So that one's pretty easy to remember. The violins use this symbol that is really just a big fancy G. If you've never noticed that before, I didn't know this till I was like 30. This is a G, and it tells the violinist, hey, that line right there is G. Okay, because it goes right through the center of the fancy dancy G. So if you look at violas, can you figure out the memory trick? Gorillas Buy Donuts Friday. I came up with that one. I'm very proud of it. Gorillas Buy Donuts Friday. That's the spaces. Now, Mr. Jones, what about the lines? My teacher taught me every good boy deserves fudge. Or, faces are cool except ghosts. I can't think of lines. The lines make me think too much. If you want to remember lines, we'll have a challenge for you. But honestly, if you can remember the space notes, you can always figure out the lines. So what's in between B and D? So you can figure it out. You go, Gorillas Buy Donuts. What's this one in between, that line note in between? Oh, well, it says right there, it's a C. Because the viola clef is supposed to look like a C. Wherever that little arch is right there, it's like a fancy C. It looks like a heavy metal C. C, yeah. Okay, the middle line is C for violas, okay? I didn't say the name of the clef. Violins have a clef called treble clef, T-R-E-B-L-E. It sounds like trouble, but it actually means triple. Yeah, it does actually. Treble, it means triple. And then this is called alto. I've heard people say alto as well, but I usually say alto, like Uncle Al's toe. Okay, that's gross. Don't remember that. C clef, the middle of their notes is a C. Okay. Challenge though, what's in between G and B? So in between these two spaces, that line note right there, what would that line step be? Not B, but in between G and B. Okay. So then we go on to cellos and basses. Their clef looks like an F. If you connect a dot there, connect the dot to the swoopy swoopies and swoop it over to the swoopies with the dot there, dotty swoopy, you can make it look sort of like an F. So this is a fancified F to tell the player, hey, see these two dots? Anything in between those two dots is an F, okay? Play an F note to pay respects, all right? All right. Now, have you figured out the memory trick for the spaces for cello and bass? All cows eat goobers. No, grass. Okay, because I think all cows do eat grass. So it's an F clef, and we call it the bass clef. This is called the alto clef. This is called the treble clef. Why are they different? That's a question for Music History Day to be announced in the future. You know, you'll hear the stories bit by bit. You stay in music, you'll hear the stories about how this all came about. It's kind of like 400 years ago. People started saying, this is the way we're going to do it. And everybody said, yeah, that's good enough. Let's do it like that. Because you could certainly write music in lots of different ways. And people have. But this is the one that's most common now. And the one that I know. So you have to learn it. Good thing is, it's actually easier than you think. If you put in the practice and the time. If you don't practice, you won't learn it. If you don't challenge yourself to learn new songs that you don't know how to play by ear, you gotta look at the page and figure out, okay, 3 on D, 2 on D, and spend the time. You'll get there. But this is the first step, remembering these guys here, okay? You can think of it like a hand, okay? It's just to remind you. You can kind of use your hands to figure it out. You can think of your spaces up and your lines in between. And these are what your strings look like. These are the open strings of each of the instruments. So I think that's it. For this week's challenge, can you come up then with a sentence for all the lines of your favorite instrument, or for all the instruments if you want an extra challenge?
That's all for this week, 5th grade stringers, but before we go, it's time for the joke of the week. What is the most musical part of a snake? The scales.
I get it. Musical scales. If you don't get that joke, you'll learn soon. You'll get it, don't worry. See everybody next time.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.